All right, we are live. What are we looking at? First columnist and tech thought leader. And something interesting that we came across is nominative determinism. Nominative determinism. Subconsciously, unconsciously, might become your name. Clear, clarity, precise, habits, systems thinking. Then you end up writing a book called Atomic Habits. So very interesting. He comes up with many interesting examples, like in UK, one of the McDonald's senior leader, her name is Zoe Hamburger. And there are many examples. I think he has James Clear in that list, but that list is pretty sick. All right. What are we looking at? See if institutional. So we also looked into Richard Hamming. Richard Hamming was very interesting. Let's see. Richard Hamming was very interesting. One of the key insights that he was talking about is whether you should be working with your doors open or doors closed. Whether you should be working with your doors open or doors closed. And that was something interesting because he is someone who was around a bunch of people. He was around a bunch of people who won Nobel Prizes, who ended up doing important work. And he was kind of like coming up with his own thesis around, he was looking at the common patterns, coming up with his thesis around what made someone do important work. And this was very interesting. He talked about that someone who worked with their door open, someone who was very smart and worked with their door closed, they worked really hard. They focused on, they had their concentration, they worked really hard, they went harder, but they ended up working on a problem which was slightly away from, which was not exactly the most important problem. It was slightly away, slightly different from the important problem. But people who worked with their doors open, yes, they got distracted a little bit by the noise, by their disturbances, but they ended up, because they kind of understood what is important, they ended up working on the important problem. So this was something very interesting that we found. And Richard Hamming, again, we want to look into all these scientists. And see what was their important work. And I'm also excited to look into James Clear and his list of great talks most people have never heard about. You and your research. Not long ago, I came across a little known speech title. You and your research. The speech had been delivered in 1986 by Richard Hamming, an accomplished mathematician and computer engineer, as part of an internal series of talks given at Bell Labs. Never heard of Hamming, the internal lecture series at Bell Labs, or this particular speech, and yet, as I read the transcript, I came across one useful insight after another. After reading that talk, I got to thinking, what other great talks and speeches are out there that I have never heard? I've been slowly searching for answers to that question, and the result is this list of my favorite, interesting, and insightful talks that are not widely known. You may see a few famous speeches on this list, but my guess is that most people are not aware of many of them, just as I wasn't when I first started looking around. As far as I know, this is the only place where you can read transcripts of these speeches in one place. Wow. The danger of a single story. Yeah, obviously you'll find the Jeff Bezos stuff. One of the reasons you also want to look into this is because you also kind of get to learn about the aesthetics. The aesthetics is something that is very important. The danger of a single story. Are there different versions to it?
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about
the danger of a single story. I love when you come up with these good names. So yesterday we were looking at the hedge fund network of Wharton University, and there were some of the speeches or some of the talks that were simply called like credit, hedge fund, something like super technical. But then there was this like the lost art of short selling, and I'm like, yes, this is what we want. The lost art of short selling. You kind of know that if someone is talking in this way, someone is talking in this particular format, they look at their work as an art. which is pretty cool. Seeking new laws, make good art. Wow, personal renewal. And this is interesting, like James Clear has kept all of them on his own website, so you are spending a lot of time on his website. Ooh, the speech was delivered to McKinsey and Company on November 10, 1990. Most fundamental tasks is the renewal of the organizations you serve. Usually includes persuading the top officers to accomplish a certain amount of self-renewal. It's not my primary mission this morning. I want to help you think about yourselves. And I've written out what I have to say because I want every sentence to hit its target. I know a good deal about the kind of work you do and know how demanding it is, but I'm not going to talk about the special problems of your kind of career. I'm going to talk about some basic problems of the life cycle that will surely hit you if you're not ready for them. I want sort of a called self-renewal that deals with the decay and renewal of societies, organizations, and individuals. I explore the question of why civilizations die and how they sometimes renew themselves, and the puzzle of why some men and women go to seed while others remain vital all of their lives. I know that you as an individual are not going to seed, but the person seated on your right may be in fairly serious danger. Okay. Not long ago, I read a splendid article on barnacles. I don't want to give the wrong impression of the focus on my reading interests. Sometimes days go by without my reading about barnacles, much less remembering what I read. But this article had an unforgettable opening paragraph. The barnacle, the author explained, is confronted with an existential decision about where it's going to live. It spends the rest of its life with its head cemented to a rock. End of quote. Okay, let's fix the temperature over here, and then we'll be back. Suddenly we have more light. Okay. Confronted with an existential decision about where it's going to live, once it decides, it spends the rest of its life with its head cemented to a rock. And of course, for a good many of us, it comes to that. We've all seen men and women, even once in fortunate circumstances, just cars driving around make so much noise. Okay. We've all seen men and women, even once in fortunate circumstances, with responsible positions who seem to run out of steam in mid-career. One must be compassionate in assessing the reasons. Perhaps life just presented them with tougher problems than they could solve. What happens? Perhaps something inflicted a major wound on their confidence or their self-esteem. Perhaps they were pulled down by the hidden resentments and grievances that grow in adult life, sometimes so luxuriantly that like tangled vines they immobilize the victim. You've known such people feeling secretly defeated, maybe somewhat sour and cynical, or perhaps just vaguely dispirited. Maybe they just ran so hard for so long that somewhere along the line they forget what it was they were running for. I'm not talking about people who fail to get to the top in achievement. We can't all get to the top, and that isn't the point of life anyway. I'm talking about people who, no matter how busy they seem to be, they have stopped learning or growing. Many of them are just going through the motions. I don't deride that. Life is hard. Just to keep on keeping on is sometimes an act of courage. But I do worry about men and women functioning far below the level of their potential. We have to face the fact that most men and women out there in the world of work are more stale than they know, more bored than they would care to admit, Boredom is the secret ailment of large-scale organizations. Someone said to me the other day, how can I be so bored when I'm so busy? And I said, let me count the ways. Logan Pearsall Smith said that boredom can rise to the level of a mystical experience. And if that's true, I know some very busy middle-level executives who are among the great mystics of all time. Boredom can rise to the level of a mystical experience, and if that's true, I know some very busy middle-level executives who are among the great mystics of all time. We can write off the danger of complacency, growing rigidity, imprisonment by our own comfortable habits and opinions. Look around you. How many people whom you know well, people even younger than yourselves, are already trapped in fixed attitudes and habits? There are people whose clocks stop at a certain point in their lives. I could without any trouble name a half of a dozen national figures resident in Washington, D.C. whom you would recognize and could tell you roughly the year their clock stopped. I won't do it because I still have to deal with them periodically. I watch a lot of mid-career people, and Yogi Berra says you can observe a lot just by watching. I've concluded that most people enjoy learning and growing, and many are dearly troubled by the self-assessments of mid-career. No great problem at your age. You're young and moving up. The drama of your own rise is enough. But when you reach middle age, when your energies aren't what they used to be, then you will begin to wonder what it all added up to. You'll begin to look for the figure in the carpet of your life. I have some simple advice for you when you begin that process. Don't be too hard on yourself. Look ahead. Someone said that life is the art of drawing without an eraser. Whoa. Life is the art of drawing without an eraser. Cursor, where you are. Cursor. The only person who are destined to become is a life is the art. This is in true fashion unknown. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you have imagined. Very simple. Life is the art of drawing without an eraser. And above all, don't imagine that the story is over. Life is a lot of chapters. If we are conscious of the danger of going to seed, we can resort to countervailing measures. At almost any age, you don't need to run down like an unwound clock. And if your clock is unwound, you can wind it up again. You can stay alive in every sense of the word until you fail physically. I know some pretty successful people who feel that just isn't possible for them, that life has trapped them. But they don't really know that life takes unexpected turns. I said in my book, Self-Renewal, that we build our own prisons and serve as our own jail keepers. Our parents and the society at large have a hand in building our prisons. They create roles for us and self-images that hold us captive for a long time. The individual intent on self-renewal will have to deal with ghosts of the past, the memory of early failures, the remnants of childhood dramas and rebellions, accumulated grievances and resentments that have long outlived their cause. Sometimes people cling to the ghost with something almost approaching pleasure, but the hampering effect on growth is inescapable. You never conquer the mountain, you only conquer yourself. Jim Whittaker, you never conquer the mountain, you only conquer yourself. This is incredible. As Jim Whittaker, who climbed Mount Everest said, you never conquer the mountain, you only conquer yourself. The more I see of human lives, the more I believe the business of growing up is much. We have another light. Yes. More light, more light, more light. Let's go. The more I see, you never conquer the mountain, you only conquer yourself. The more I see of human lives, the more I believe the business of growing up is much longer drawn out than we pretend. If we achieve it in our 30s, even our 40s, we are doing well. Those of you who are parents of teenagers, I can only say sorry about that. There's a myth that learning is for young people, but as the proverb says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. It's what you learn after you know it all counts. The middle years are great learning years. Even the years past the middle years, I took on a new job after my 77th birthday, and I'm still learning. Learn all your life, learn from your failures, learn from your success. When you hit a spell of trouble, ask, what is it trying to teach me? The lessons aren't always happy ones, but they keep coming. It isn't a bad idea to pause occasionally for an inward look. By midlife, most of us are accomplished fugitives from ourselves. We learn from our jobs, from our friends and families. We learn by accepting the commitments of life, by playing the roles that life hands us, not necessarily the roles we would have chosen. We learn by growing older, by suffering, by loving, by bearing with the things we can't change, by taking risks. We learn from our jobs, from our friends and families. We learn by accepting the commitments of life, by playing the roles that life hands us, not necessarily the roles we would have chosen. We learn by growing older, by suffering, by loving, by bearing with the things we can't change, by taking risk. The things you learn in maturity aren't simple things such as acquiring information and skills. You learn not to engage in self-destructive behavior. The things you learn in maturity aren't simple things such as acquiring information and skills. You learn not to engage in self-destructive behavior. You learn not to burn up energy and anxiety. You discover how to manage your tensions if you have any, which you do. You learn that self-pity and resentment are among the most toxic of drugs. You find that the world loves talent but pays off on character. The things you learn in maturity aren't simple things such as acquiring information and skills. You learn not to engage in self-destructive behavior. You learn not to burn up energy and anxiety. You discover how to manage your tensions if you have any, which you do. You learn that self-pity and resentment are among the most toxic of drugs. You find that the world loves talent but pays off on character. You come to understand that most people are neither for you nor against you. They are thinking of themselves. You learn that no matter how hard you try to please, some people in this world are not going to love you. A lesson that is at first troubling and then really quite relaxing. Those are things that are hard to learn early in life. As a rule, you have to have picked up some mileage and some dents in your fenders before you understand. As Norman Douglas said, there are some things you can't learn from others. You have to pass through the fire. Wow. Yes, let's go. I think we're going to talk about things that I highly relate with. Boom. There are some things you can't learn from others. You have to pass through the fire. Norman Douglas. Whoa, what did I do? No. Come over here. Boom. Norman Douglas. Yes, my goal is to change all these. Do we have anyone left? Joseph Campbell, Trent Reznor, Russ, Picasso, Inspiration Exists, Picasso, Vinod Khosla, Rob Silterman. People are crazy not to think they can change. Okay, this one we need to change. Maya Angelou, A Bird Doesn't Sing, Unknown. Okay, this one is good. Henry David Thoreau, we need to change. Norman Douglas, Claude Shannon, I Ain't Scared of Nothing. Richard Hamming. Okay, we just have a couple that we need to change now, and then we're good. You come to terms with yourself. You finally grasp what S.N. Berman meant when he said, at the end of every road you meet yourself. At the end of every road you meet yourself. You may not get rid of all of your hang-ups, but you learn to control them to the point that you can function productively and not hurt others. You learn the odds of mutual dependence, meeting the needs of loved ones and letting yourself need them. You can even be unaffected, a quality that often takes years to acquire. You can achieve the simplicity that lies beyond sophistication. You come to understand your impact on others. It's interesting that even in the first year of life, you learn the impact that a variety of others have on you, but as late as middle age, many people have a very imperfect understanding of the impact they themselves have on others. The hostile person keeps asking, why are people so hard to get along with? In some measure, we create our own environment. You may not yet grasp the power of that truth to change your life. In some measure, we create our own environment. You may not yet grasp the power of that truth to change your life. Of course, failures are a part of the story too. Everyone fails. Joe Louis said, everyone has to figure to get beat sometime. Everyone has to figure to get beat sometime. The question isn't did you fail, but did you pick yourself up and move ahead? And there is one other little question. Did you collaborate in your own defeat? A lot of people do learn not to. One of the enemies of sound, lifelong motivation is a rather childish conception we have of the kind of concrete, indescribable goal toward which all of our efforts drive us. We want to believe that there is a point at which we can feel that we have arrived. We want a scoring system that tells us when we have piled up enough points to count ourselves successful. So you scramble and sweat and climb to reach what you thought was the goal. When you get to the top, stand up and look around, and chances are you feel a little empty. Maybe more than a little empty. You wonder whether you climbed the wrong mountain. But life isn't a mountain that has a summit, nor is it, as some suppose, a riddle that has an answer, nor a game that has a final score. Life isn't a mountain that has a summit, nor is it, as some suppose, a riddle that has an answer, nor a game that has a final score. Life is an endless unfolding, and if we wish it to be, an endless process of self-discovery, an endless and unpredictable dialogue between our own potentialities and the life situations in which we find ourselves. By potentialities, I mean not just intellectual gifts, but the full range of one's capacities for learning, sensing, wondering, understanding, loving, and aspiring. Life is an endless unfolding, and if we wish it to be, an endless process of self-discovery, an endless and unpredictable dialogue between our own potentialities and the life situations in which we find ourselves. By potentialities, I mean not just intellectual gifts, but the full range of one's capacities for learning, sensing, wondering, understanding, living, and aspiring. You imagine that by age 35, 45, even 33, you have explored those potentialities pretty fully. Don't kid yourself. The thing you have to understand is that the capacities you actually develop to the full come out as the result of an interplay between you and life's challenges. And the challenges keep changing. Life pulls things out of you. There's something I know about you that you may or may not know about yourself. You have within you more resources of energy than have ever been tapped, more talent than has ever been exploited, more strength than has ever been tested, more to give than you have ever given. There's something I know about you that you may or may not know about yourself. You have within you more resources of energy than have ever been tapped, more talent than has ever been exploited, more strength than has ever been tested, more to give than you have ever given. You know about some of the gifts that you have left undeveloped. Would you believe that you have gifts and possibilities you don't even know about? It's true. We're just beginning to recognize how even those who have had every advantage and opportunity unconsciously put a ceiling on their own growth, underestimate their potentialities, or hide from the risk that growth involves. Now I have discussed renewal at some length, but it isn't possible to talk about renewal without touching on the subject of motivation. Someone defined horse sense as the good judgment horses have that prevents them from betting on people. But if we have to bet on people, and I place my bets more often on high motivation than on any other quality except judgment. There's no perfection or techniques that will substitute for the lift of spirit and heightened performance that comes from strong motivation. The world is moved by highly motivated people, by enthusiasts, by men and women who want something very much or believe very much. I'm not talking about anything as narrow as ambition. After all, ambition eventually wears out, and probably should, but you can keep your zest until the day you die. If I may offer you a simple maxim, be interesting. Everyone wants to be interesting, but the vitalizing thing is to be interested. Keep a sense of curiosity, discover new things, care, risk failure, reach out. Reach out. Okay, reach out reminds me that I gotta reach out. Okay, we reached out. The nature of one's personal commitments is a powerful element in renewal, so let me say a word on that subject. I once lived in a house where I could look out a window as I worked at my desk and observe a small herd of cattle browsing in a neighboring field, and I was struck with a thought that must have occurred to the earliest herdsmen tens of thousands of years ago. You never get the impression that a cow is about to have a nervous breakdown or is puzzling about the meaning of life. Humans have never mastered that kind of complacency. We are warriors and puzzlers, and we want meaning in our lives. I'm not speaking idealistically, I'm stating a plainly observable fact about men and women. There's a rare person who can go through life like a homeless alley cat, living from day to day, taking its pleasures where it can and dying unnoticed. That isn't to say that we haven't all known a few alley cats, but it isn't the norm. It just isn't the way we are built. As Robert Louis Stevenson said, old or young, we are on our last cruise. Wow. Really cool. Old or young, we are on our last cruise. We want it to mean something. For many, this life is a vale of tears. For no one is it free of pain. But we are so designed that we can cope with it if we can live in some context of meaning. Given that powerful help, we can draw on the deep springs of the human spirit to see our suffering in the framework of all human suffering, to accept the gifts of life with thanks and endure life's indignities with dignity. In the stable periods of history, meaning was supplied in the context of a coherent communities and traditionally prescribed patterns of culture. Today, you can't count on any such heritage. You have to build meaning into your life. And you build it through your commitments, whether to your religion, to an ethical order as you conceive it, to your life's work, to loved ones, to your fellow humans. Young people run around searching for identity, but it isn't handed out free anymore. Not in its transient, rootless, pluralistic society. Today you can't count on any such heritage. You have to build meaning into your life. And you build it through your commitments, whether to your religion, to your ethical order, as you conceive it, to your life's work, to loved ones, to your fellow humans. Young people run around searching for identity, but it isn't handed out free anymore. Not in this transient, rootless, pluralistic society. Your identity is what you have committed yourself to. It may just mean doing a better job at whatever you are doing. There are men and women who make the world better just by being the kind of people they are. And that too is a kind of commitment. They have the gift of kindness or courage or loyalty or integrity. It matters very little whether they are behind the wheel of a truck or running a country store or bringing up a family. I must pause to say a word about my statement. There are men and women who make the world better just by being the kind of people they are. I first wrote the sentence some years ago. It has been widely quoted. One day I was looking through a mail order gift catalog and it included some small ornamental bronze plaques with brief sayings on them, and one of those sayings was the one I just read to you with my name as author. Then I ordered it, but then couldn't figure out what in the world to do with it. I finally sent it to a friend. We tend to think of youth and the active middle years as the years of commitment. As you get a little older, you are told you have earned the right to think about yourself, but that's a deadly prescription. People of every age need commitments beyond the self, need the meaning that commitments provide. Self-preoccupation is a prison. As every self-absorbed person finally knows, commitments to larger purposes can get you out of prison. Another significant ingredient in motivation is one's attitude toward the future. Another significant ingredient in motivation is one's attitude toward the future. Optimism is unfashionable today, particularly among intellectuals. Everyone makes fun of it. Someone said pessimists got that way by financing optimists. But I'm not pessimistic and advise you not to be. As the fellow said, I would be a pessimist, but it would never work. That is really cool. That is really cool. I would be a pessimist, but it would never work. You're a pessimist about being a pessimist. I can tell you that for renewal, a tough-minded optimism is best. The future is not shaped by people who don't really believe in the future. Men and women of vitality have always been prepared to bet their futures, even their lives, on ventures of unknown outcome. If they had all looked before they leaped, we would still be crouched in caves, sketching animal pictures on the walls. But I did say tough-minded optimism. High hopes that are dashed by the first failure are precisely what we don't need. We have to believe in ourselves, but we must not suppose that the path will be easy. It's tough. Life is painful and rain falls on the just. And Mr. Churchill was not being a pessimist when he said, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. He had a great deal more to offer, but as a good leader, he was saying it wasn't going to be easy. He was also saying something that all great leaders say constantly, that failure is simply a reason to strengthen resolve. Strengthen resolve. We cannot dream of a utopia in which all arrangements are ideal and everyone is flawless. Life is tumultuous, an endless losing and regaining of balance, a continuous struggle, never an assured victory. Nothing is ever finally safe. Every important battle is fought and refought. We need to develop a resilient, indomitable morale that enables us to face those realities and still strive with every ounce of energy to prevail. You may wonder if such a struggle, endless and of uncertain outcome, isn't more than humans can bear, but all of history suggests that the human spirit is well fitted to cope with just that kind of world. Remember, I mentioned earlier the myth that learning is for young people. I want to give you some examples in a piece I wrote for Reader Digest. 53 years old. Dead in misfortune. In military service, he received a battlefield injury that denied him the use of his left arm. He was seized and held in captivity for 5 years. Later, he held 2 government jobs, succeeding in neither. He was in prison not for the first time. Driven by heaven, knows what motive, boredom, the hope of gain, emotional release, creative impulse, who can say? Turned out to be one of the greatest ever written, a book that has enthralled the world for forever. 350 years. The prisoner was Cervantes. The book Don Quixote. Wow, Quixote. What is this book about? Miguel, middle-aged man who reads so many chivalric romances that he loses his grip on reality and decides to become a knight errant. He rides out with his practical sidekick, Sancho Panza, and famously attacks windmills, believing they are giants. Far more interesting, reality versus imagination, lives by a self-chosen story about the world. The book asks, are you foolish for believing in a noble vision, or empty for living without one? Wow. The book asks, are you foolish for believing in a noble vision, or empty for living without one? Idealism versus pragmatism. Sancho represents common sense, incentives, and survival. Quixote, Don, represents meaning, honor, and aspiration. Neither is sufficient alone. that became a mirror because a parody of outdated hero myths, and accidentally became the first modern novel because it treats characters as psychologically real, contradictory, and self-aware. After prison, failure, and obscurity, the book itself is an argument that creative and moral flowering can happen very late. Choosing a story worth living, even at the risk of looking ridiculous. That's why Gardner cites it in his speech for renewal. The danger isn't delusion, it's stagnation. A life without illusion may be accurate, but it might not be alive. Without illusion may be accurate, but it might not be alive. So it's better to have an illusion. It's better to be chasing something than stagnating. Oh. Which windmill am I currently calling a giant, and is that actually a mistake? Wow, really cool, really cool. Another example was Pope John XX23, who found a lot to laugh about. The son of peasant farmers, he once said, "In Italy there are 3 roads to poverty: drinking, gambling, and fanning. My family chose the slowest of the 3. When someone asked him how many people worked in the Vatican, he said, "Oh, about half." He was 76 years old when he was elected Pope. Through a lifetime in the bureaucracy, the spark of spirit and imagination had remained undimmed, and when he reached the top, he launched the most vigorous renewal that the Church has known in this century. So another example is Winston Churchill. At age 25, as a correspondent in the Boer War, he became a prisoner of war, and his dramatic escape made him a national hero. Elected to Parliament at 26, he performed brilliantly, held high cabinet posts with distinction, and at 35 became First Lord of the Admiralty. Then he was discredited, unjustly I believe, by the Dardanelles expedition. The defeat at Gallipoli and lost his Admiralty post. 24 years of ups and downs. All too often the verdict on him was brilliant but erratic, not steady, not dependable. He had only himself to blame. A friend described him as a man who jaywalked through life. He was 66 before his moment of flowering came. Someone said it's all right to be a late bloomer if you don't miss the flower show. Interesting. Before his moment of flowering came, someone said it's all right to be a late bloomer if you don't miss the flower show. Churchill didn't miss it. Well, I won't give you any more examples from those I have given. I hope it's clear to you that the door of opportunity isn't really closed as long as you are reasonably healthy. And I don't just mean opportunity for high status, but opportunity to grow and enrich your life in every dimension. You just don't know what's ahead of you. And remember the words on the bronze plaque. Some men and women make the world better just by being the kind of people they are. To be that kind of person would be worth all the years of living and learning. Many years ago, I concluded a speech with a paragraph on the meaning of life. The speech was reprinted over the years, and 15 years later, the final paragraph came back to me in a rather dramatic way, really a heartbreaking way. A man wrote to me from Colorado saying that his 20-year-old daughter had been killed in an auto accident some weeks before, and that she was carrying in her billfold a paragraph from a speech of mine. He said he was grateful because the paragraph and the fact that she kept it close to her told him something he might not otherwise have known about her values and concerns. I can't imagine where and how she came across the paragraph, but here it is. Wow, this is crazy. This is crazy to have written something. To have written something that somebody holds so close to them. Like, for me, Charles Bukowski wrote this thing that I really like. If you're going to try, go all the way, otherwise don't even start. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, and maybe even your mind. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision. It could mean mockery. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of endurance, of how much you really want to do it, and you will do it despite rejection and the worst odds. It will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. This last line is beautiful. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. Meaning is not something you stumble across, like the answer to a riddle or the prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is not something you stumble across, like the answer to a riddle or the prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is something you build into your life. You build it out of your own past, out of your affections and loyalties, out of the experience of humankind as it is passed on to you, out of your own talent and understanding, out of the things you believe in, out of the things and people you love, out of the values for which you are willing to sacrifice something. The ingredients are there. You are the only one who can put them together into that unique pattern that will be your life. Let it be a life that has dignity and meaning for you. If it does, then the particular balance of success or failure is of less account. He also has a masterclass. James Clear has a book, masterclass, a journal, Clear, and then has an app. Interesting. Meaning is not something you stumble across, like the answer to a riddle or the prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is something you build into your life. You build it out of your own past, out of your affections and loyalties, out of the experience of humankind as it is passed on to you, out of your own talent and understanding, out of the things you believe in, out of the things and people you love, out of the values for which you are willing to sacrifice something. The ingredients are there. You are the only one who can put them together into that unique pattern that will be your life. Let it be a life that has dignity and meaning for you. If it does, then the particular balance of success or failure is of less account. Make good art. Make good art. Let's go. Let's go to another one. This looks pretty cool. Me and Tech Bro's worst nightmare on the first weekend of 2026, measuring my first night of Whoop powered by sleep at night. What is happening? People are getting atomic habits too much. Donald Trump posted, "Work hard, be smart, and always remember winning takes care of everything." It's an incredible deterrent signal to other autocrats that anti-US alignment is not a cost-free aesthetic choice. Unlock resource access for US companies and allies that had been artificially constrained, materially weakened by increasing global energy supply and starving war economy. More than most will admit, best case outcome is to send Ruby a few other dudes, help scaffold a democratic transition, leave early, and gain a pragmatic ally. The exit is 100x more important than the entry. Writing is a tool for thinking. If there was a better way to think more clearly with AI, I would switch to that. Software is no longer the bottleneck. Oh my god. Elon Musk tweets in Persian. Let's go. My family vacation in the Caribbean has no relation to the overthrowing of the Venezuelan government. I'm on a cruise ship, not the USS. Tanmay, I quit my job, made the decision to move to SF, hunting for hacker houses. When I did join ODF, I realized something important. SF itself isn't magical, the people make it magical. The ambition, the energy, the sense that everyone is actually trying. Intense week, but in the best way, being surrounded by people going through the same doubts, fears, and trade-offs. It gave me belief that I wasn't alone. The talks didn't just inspire, they helped me confront fear and make the jump from 9 to 5 to building full-time. I made lifelong connections and found my community in SF. Shout out to Julian if you're employed but close to quitting to start something, starting on ODF 27 applications. Really cool. Pickle exposed, sliced and diced. Oh my god. I'm the founder of a virtual reality company called Wild and have been almost exclusively in VR for the past 5 years. One of the brightest, widest fields of view designed for everyday life. Even when you're walking in direct sunlight, you can clearly see full color AR displays which no one else can see. Okay, something interesting is happening over here. Building under the weight of other people's expectations. I honestly thought it was some kind of a joke. Studies computer science with a focus on math for liquids ballet to avoid distraction. Founding Kalshi. Founds Kalshi right after graduating. Real money prediction markets fully legal in the US. Cool. Price the future better than polls or media. Immediate problem US regulation. Regulation going to choose offshore crypto routes. Kalshi chooses to fight regulators head on. Years of legal pressures and delays. Legal breakthrough. Federal judge rules on Kalshi's favor. Court says CFTC overstep authority. Prediction markets become legally validated in the US. Kalshi gains massive regulatory moat. Kalshi explodes. Valuation reaches 11 billion. Total volume processed. Partnerships like CNN, CNBC, NHL, Coinbase, and Robinhood. Net worth 1.3 billion and age 29. Owns no luxury items. Works until late every day. Simple food, minimal routine. Today, youngest self-made millionaire. Founder, co-founder of the largest prediction market. Still obsessed with execution. Still working every day. From elite ballet discipline to the future of finance. Stay in your lane. If I would stay in my lane, I would still be living in my hometown making drum and bass music. Someone is going to build an API for McKinsey. You would think it would get old, but man, I love it. I love this game so much. Everything about it, the pain, precision, discipline, scaffolding, sacrifice, and code cracking. It fills me with so much joy every day. Who would make great executives? Who would make terrible middle managers because they don't understand the desire to be led. that many people have because they have never experienced this themselves. Desire to be led. Desire to be led is so interesting. It really cannot be overstated how many of your problems disappear once you have a beautiful woman who's in love with you. Okay, make good art. Make good art. Okay, also, this tweet looks interesting. So look into it. Bookmarks. And this one. The invisible dead building under the weight of other people's expectations. It was 2 p.m. and just as my co-founder sent me the photo, his son asleep with him. 20 minutes, not because it was touching, though it was, but because I felt the full weight of what we were doing, not just building another product, killing the ghost of everything that came before. If you know me, you know LaserPay, a crypto payments company that raised money, got traction, had users and then didn't make it. I've written about the pivot, the wind down, the lessons. What I haven't written about is what it did to me. That I felt I had to repay not in money but in proof. Proof that I wasn't just lucky the first time. Proof that I could do it again. Proof that everyone who believed in me wasn't wrong. Invisible Debt changed how I built. Every decision became a referendum on my competence. Every product choice was shadowed by what will people think. I was no longer building for users, I was building for the audience in my head. The VCs who passed, the founders who made it, the people who watched LaserPay end and wondered if I had what it took. The debt that is unreal. There's a kind of founder who fails and bounces back immediately but learns so much onto the next energy. Good for them. I'm not that person. The hardest conversations weren't with investors or the press, they were with the team, telling people who had trusted me that I couldn't pay them anymore. Older than me with families and bills process what my failure meant for their lives. Something broke in me after that, not permanently but deeply enough that it took years to rebuild. Working on PNS right after and built it completely. Got 3,000 plus people on the waitlist during the ENS NFT boom. Kept delaying the launch. Weeks became months. I was paralyzed. Guy, what are we doing with PNS? Are we launching or not? I don't believe I'm capable of being a founder right now. I eventually went back to building. The confidence wasn't there. With LaserPay, we had built MVPs in weeks and launched immediately after LaserPay. I overthought everything. Every launch needed perfect timing. Every decision needed bulletproof justification. I was performing competence because I didn't actually feel it. It's only the last few months that the old confidence has started coming back. It already moved on. The investors, they wrote it off and deployed the rest of their fund. The team members, they got jobs at places where they were thriving. The users, they found other solutions. Every product decision because I was terrified of failing publicly again. The yield aggregation product, we spent months on design refinements. I chased signals instead of conviction. When VC said yield is interesting, I leaned in. Not because I believed yield would change the world, but because someone with money said it was interesting. When people asked, why not just build a neobank? I seriously considered not because I wanted to do it, because I was afraid of seeming contrarian or difficult. I shipped slower because I was performing competence. Every launch had to have the perfect narrative. Every pivot had to have the perfect justification. Why this was the right move, actually. The performance was exhausting. And it nearly stopped me from building anything worth building. Build the autonomous yield agent, the thing I was actually proud of, and I was pitching him and asking for feedback. He said, this is nice, but what's the end game? Are you going to add trading, become a neobank? I need to see the path to 100 million revenue. We're thinking about adding agentic trading, enabling people create agent trade tokens with this lab could expand into a stop mid-sentence. Building something I didn't believe in from someone whose opinion I didn't even respect because I was afraid of looking like I didn't have it figured out. I think we're building the wrong thing. But I don't care if it works. I'm building it because I think I'm supposed to. Because it checks boxes. Because it looks like a reasonable next job for LaserPay. So what should we build? I spent so long trying to build what would rehabilitate my reputation that I had forgotten to ask what I actually give a shit about. Who's really asking? Build something with clear PMF this time. Just build a neobank. Just build a neobank, there's a clear path there. And make sure it's technically impressive. My own ego, trying to prove I'm smart. Pick something that can scale to 100 million, some imaginary seasoned investor I've never met. You have pivoted a lot, don't pivot again, looks flaky. Actually, near those expectations I was trying to meet, I realized none of these people are in the arena with me. They are not coding at 2 a.m. They are not dealing with Justice's baby crying in the background of calls. They are not the ones who will feel it if we fail. Ooh, so why the fuck was I giving them a vote? The only opinions that mattered mine. Do I believe this is important? Can we build this, and does he believe in it? Will this solve a real problem for them? That's it. That's the whole list. Everyone else's expectation. They were just noise. But my relationship to it had changed. I wasn't building it to prove anything, I was building it to learn. We built for 6 months and shipped something generally good to our early users. What we achieved, the cleanest interface for DeFi yield I've ever seen. No jargon, no long onboarding. Sign up deposits, start on. Truly autonomous yield agent, zero user funds lost. My friend's mom was a liquid user. If you can build DeFi that someone's mom can use without their kid holding their hand, you have done something right. I could see clearly yield doesn't scale in a way that matters without adding banking initiatives, and with AI agents it becomes even more expensive to run and scale. The margins compress as you grow. I can offer 4 to 5% with FDIC insurance and zero gas fees. We could see the path ahead, incremental improvements to a fundamentally limited opportunity. We considered adding trading, but trading without a sustainable moat meant competing against every well-funded exchange on earth. We need to be 10x better just to be considered. There are already brilliant teams building beautiful neobanks for crypto. I wasn't afraid of how it would look. Sure, if we pivot again, everyone will say we can't stick with anything, better to keep pushing on yield and hope it gets better. We learned what we need to learn, now we move. Don't pivot again, you will look flaky. I would rather look flaky than waste years on something I don't believe in. For builders carrying the weight, if you're carrying the ghost of a previous startup, I see you. If you're building under the weight of other people's expectations, I feel that. If you have a co-founder with real stakes, a baby, family, responsibility, a life that depends on this working, the debt you feel you owe to investors, users, people who believed in you, it isn't real. They moved on. You are the only one still carrying it. The expectations people have of you are their projections, not your obligations. They are telling you what they would do, what they are afraid of, what they need to believe. None of that is your responsibility. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. The expectations people have of you are their projections, not your obligations. They're telling you what they would do, what they are afraid of, what they need to believe. None of that is your responsibility. The voices in your head aren't yours. And call them wisdom, but wisdom doesn't make you smaller, it makes you braver. The only way out is through. Ship, learn, pivot, repeat until you find something that matters enough to be worth the weight you're carrying. What I would tell myself 12 months ago. Other people's expectations are usually projections of their own fears. They wanted me to validate their worldview, that calculated incremental progress is how you win. Who looked reckless from the outside but knew exactly what they were doing. Overthinking is just fear wearing a productivity costume. All those hours I spent strategizing and analyzing the market, that was procrastination. I was terrified of shipping something and watching it fail publicly again, so I analyzed, I refined, I validated assumptions. I was just avoiding the discomfort of putting something real into the world. The debt you feel you owe isn't real. The investors who lost money on LaserPay, they moved on. The users who were disappointed, they found other solutions. The people who are still judging you for it, they are not building anything themselves. You are the only one still carrying that weight, and you can put it down anytime. Pivots aren't failure, they are just expensive education. Every pivot hurt. This is very interesting. Because you have to adapt in this world. You have to pivot. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. Your job is to keep solving problems, which is keep pivoting. You're the only one still carrying the weight, and you can put it down anytime. Pivots aren't failures, they are just expensive education. Yield to trading, to insurance, to margin. Each one felt like admitting the last thing was wrong. Each one got us closer to something that actually mattered. The founders who never pivot either got lucky or aren't being honest. The weight never goes away. You just get stronger. The pressure to succeed is still real. I'm just building the capacity to carry it while still moving forward. The weight is part of the game. Accepting it is how you stay in the game. Build the thing that scares you most. Not because it will definitely work, but because at least you will be proud of what you attempted. As entrepreneurs, we can rationalize anything. We see opportunities everywhere. We can construct compelling narratives for why X market is the next big thing. This time is different, but here's what I've learned. The narrative doesn't matter as much as the commitment. The rationalization is just noise. You put something out there and refuse to give up. You ship, you learn, you adjust, repeat until something works or you run out of hope. The winners aren't the ones with the best thesis. They are the ones who kept trying when everyone else quit. Wandering into prediction markets. Every price is a hypothesis tested, continues by capital. Every trade is a vote weighted by conviction. Prediction markets extend this logic to probability itself. They answer questions that polls can't. During the election cycle, I watched this play out in real time. Polymarket was pricing Trump's odds more accurately than any poll. Flowing through these markets, people putting real money behind their convictions, not sentiment, not vibes, actual capital allocation. This felt similar, not the prediction markets themselves, but the moment. Peace to all those engaged in the struggle to fulfill their dreams. Build a moonshot, the safe bet can wait. Build the moonshot. The safe bet can wait. Pull the moonshot, the safe bet can wait. Yes. Yes. Okay, make good art. It's a small one. Neil Gaiman. I had never really expected to find myself giving advice to people graduating from an establishment of higher education. I never graduated from any such establishment. I never even started at one. I escaped from school as soon as I could, when the prospect of 4 more years of enforced learning before I had become the writer I wanted to be was stifling. I got out into the world, I wrote, and I became a better writer the more I wrote. And I wrote some more, and nobody ever seemed to mind that I was making it up as I went along. They just read what I wrote and they paid for it, or they didn't, and often they commissioned me to write something else for them. which has left me with a healthy respect and fondness for higher education that those of my friends and family who attended universities were cured of long ago. I'm not sure I can call it a career because a career implies that I had some kind of career plan, and I never did. The nearest thing I had was a list I made when I was 15 of everything I wanted to do: to write an adult novel, a children's book, a comic, a movie, record an audiobook, write an episode of Doctor Who, so on. I didn't have a career. I just did the next thing on the list, so I thought I would tell you everything. I wish I'd known starting out, and a few things are looking back on it I suppose that I did know, and that I would also give you the best piece of advice I'd ever got, which I completely failed to follow. When you start out on a career in the arts, you have no idea what you are doing. This is great. People who know what they are doing know the rules and know what is possible and impossible. You do not. And you should not. The rules on what is possible and impossible in the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them. And you can. If you don't know it's impossible, it's easier to do. And because nobody's done it before, they haven't made up rules to stop anyone doing that again yet. What are some topics on which I can write 1,000-word essay? Let's go to quotes. Norman Douglas, there are some things you can't learn from others. You have to pass through the fire. You have to pass through the fire. This is great. People who know what they are doing know the rules. The rules on what is possible and impossible. And the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them, and you can. If you don't know it's possible, it's easier to do, and because nobody's done it before, they haven't made up rules to stop anyone doing that again yet. Secondly, if you have an idea of what you want to make, what you were put here to do, then just go and do that. And that's much harder than it sounds, and sometimes at the end so much easier than you might imagine, because normally there are things you have to do before you can get to the place you want to be. I wanted to write comics and novels and stories and films, so I became a journalist, because journalists are allowed to ask questions and to simply go and find out how the world works. And besides to do those things, I needed to write, and to write well. I was being paid to learn how to write economically, crisply, sometimes under adverse conditions, and on time. The way to do what you hope to do will be clear-cut, and sometimes it will be almost impossible to decide whether or not you are doing the correct thing, because you will have to balance your goals and hopes with feeding yourself, paying debts, finding work, settling for what you can get. Something that worked for me was imagining that where I wanted to be, an author primarily for fiction, making good books, making good comics, and supporting myself through my words, was a mountain, a distant mountain, my goal. And I knew that as long as I kept walking towards the mountain, I would be alright. And when I truly was not sure what to do, I could stop and think about whether it was taking me towards or away from the mountain. I said no to editorial jobs and magazines, proper jobs that would have paid proper money, because I knew that, attractive though they were for me, they would have been walking away from the mountain. And if those job offers had come along earlier, I might have taken them, because they still would have been closer to the mountain than I was at the time. I learned to write by writing. I didn't to do anything as long as it felt like an adventure, and to stop when it felt like work, which meant that life did not feel like work. When you start off, you have to deal with the problems of failure. You need to be thick-skinned to learn that not every project will survive a freelance life in the arts. Putting messages in bottles on a desert island and hoping that someone will find one of your bottles and open it and read it and put something in a bottle that will wash its way back to you, appreciation or a commission or money or love, And you have to accept that you may put out 100 things for every bottle that winds up coming back. The problems of failure are problems of discouragement, of hopelessness, of hunger. You want everything to happen and you want it now, and things go wrong. I first spoke a piece of journalism I had done for the money, and which had already bought me an electric typewriter from the Advance, should have been a bestseller. It should have paid me a lot of money if the publisher hadn't gone into involuntary liquidation between the first print run sending out in the second printing, and before any royalties could be paid. It would have done, and I shrugged. I still had my electric typewriter, enough money to pay the rent for a couple of months, and decided that I would do my best in future not to write books just for the money. If you didn't get the money, then you didn't have anything. If I did work I was proud of and I didn't get the money, at least I would have the work. Every now and again I forget that rule, and whenever I do, the universe kicks me hard and reminds me. I don't know that it's an issue for anybody but me, but it's true that nothing I did where the only reason for doing it was the money was ever worth it. I didn't wind up getting the money either. The things I did because I was excited and wanted to see them exist in reality have never let me down, and I have never regretted the time I spent on any of them. The problems of failures are hard. The problems of success can be harder because nobody warns you about them. The first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you are getting away with something, and that any moment now they will discover you. It's imposter. Something my wife Amanda Christian, the fraud police. In my case, I was convinced that there would be a knock on the door and a man with a clipboard. I don't know why he carried a clipboard in my head, but he would be there to tell me it was all over, and they had caught up with me, and now I would have to go and get a real job, making things up and writing them down and reading books I wanted to read. Then I would go away quietly and get the kind of job where you don't have to make things up anymore. The problems of success, they are real, and with luck you'll experience them. The point where you stop saying yes to everything because now the bottles you threw in the ocean are all coming back, and have to learn to say no. And the ones who were older than me, and watch how miserable some of them were, I'll listen to them telling me that they couldn't envisage a world where they did what they had always wanted to do anymore, because now they had to earn a certain amount every month just to keep where they were. They couldn't envisage a world where they did what they had always wanted to do anymore, because now they had to earn a certain amount every month just to keep where they were. They had really wanted to do, and that seemed as a big tragedy as any problem of failure. The biggest problem of success is that the world conspires to stop you doing the thing that you do because you are successful. There was a day when I looked up and realized that I had become someone who professionally replied to email and who wrote as a hobby. I started answering fewer emails and was relieved to find I was writing much more. I hope you will make mistakes. If you're making mistakes, it means you are out there doing something, and the mistakes in themselves can be useful. I once misspelled Caroline in a letter, transposing the A and the O, and I thought, Coraline looks like a real name. And remember that whatever discipline you are in, whether you are a musician or a photographer, a fine artist or a cartoonist, a writer or a dancer, a designer, whatever you do, you have one thing that's unique. You have the ability to make art. And for me, and for so many people have known, that's been a lifesaver. Life is sometimes hard. Things go wrong in life, and in love, and in business, and in friendship, and in health, and in all the other ways that life can go wrong. And when things get tough, this is what you should do. Make good art. I'm serious. Husband runs off with a politician. Make good art. Leg crushed and then eaten by mutated boa constrictor. Make good art. IRS on your trail. Make good art. Cat exploded. Make good art. Somebody on the internet thinks what you do is stupid or evil, or it's all been done before. Make good art. Probably things will work out somehow, and eventually time will take the sting away, but that doesn't matter. Do what only you do best. Make good art. Make it on the good days too. And fifthly, while you're at it, make your art. do the stuff that only you can do. The urge starting out is to copy, and that's not a bad thing. Most of us only find our own voices after we have sounded like a lot of other people, but the only thing that you have that nobody else has is you. Your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and dance and live as only you can. The moment that you feel that, just possibly you're walking down the street naked, exposing too much of your heart and your mind and what exists on the inside, showing too much of yourself, that's the moment you may be starting to get it right. The things I have done that worked the best were the things I was the least certain about. The stories where I was sure they would either work or more likely be the kinds of embarrassing failures people would gather together and talk about until the end of time. Looking back at them, people explain why they were inevitable success, which while I was doing them I had no idea. I still don't. And where would be the fun in making something you knew was going to work? The things I did really didn't work. There are stories of mine that have never been reprinted. Some of them never even left in the house. But I learned as much from them as I did from the things that worked. I will pass on some secret freelancer knowledge. Secret knowledge is always good and is useful for anyone who ever plans to create art for other people, to enter a freelance world of any kind. I learned it in comics, but it applies to other fields too, and it's this. Somehow they get hired. In my case, I did something which these days would be easy to check and would get me into trouble. And when I started out, in those pre-internet days, seemed like a sensible career strategy. When I was asked by editors who I worked for, I lied. I listed a handful of magazines that sounded likely, and I sounded confident I got jobs. I then made it a point of honor to have written something for each of the magazines I listed to get that first job, so that I hadn't actually lied. I'd just been chronologically challenged. You get work, however you get work. People keep working in a freelance world, and more of today's world is freelance because their work is good, and because they're easy to get along with, and because they deliver the work on time. You don't even need all three. 2 out of 3 is fine. People tolerate how unpleasant you are if your work is good. They'll forgive the lateness of the work if it's good and if they like you. And you don't have to be as good as the others if you're on time, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you. I started trying to think what the best advice I had been given over the years. This is really great, you should enjoy it. And it came from Stephen King 20 years ago at the height of the success of Sandman. I was writing a comic that people loved and were taking seriously. King had liked Sandman in my novel with Good Omens, and he saw the madness of the long singing lines, all that, and his advice was this is really great, you should enjoy it. And I did the best advice I got that I ignored. Instead, I worried about it. I worried about the next deadline, the next idea, the next story. There wasn't a moment for the next 14 or 15 years that I wasn't writing something in my head or wondering about it. And I didn't stop and look around and go, this is really fun, I wish I had enjoyed it more. It's been an amazing ride, but there were parts of the ride I missed because I was too worried about things going wrong, about what came next, to enjoy the bit I was on. That was the hardest lesson for me, I think. To let go and enjoy the ride, because the ride takes you to some remarkable and unexpected places. And here on this platform, today is one of those places. I'm enjoying myself immensely. Luck is useful. Often you will discover that the harder you work and the more wisely you work, the luckier you get. But there is luck, and it helps. We are in a transitional world right now. If you are in any kind of artistic field, because the nature of distribution is changing, the models by which creators got their work out into the world and got to keep a roof over their heads and buy sandwiches while they did that are all changing. Food chain and publishing and book selling, in all those areas, and nobody knows what the landscape will look like 2 years from now, let alone a decade away. The distribution channels that people had built over the last century or so are in flux, for print, for visual artists, for musicians, for creative people of all kinds. On the one hand intimidating, and on the other immensely liberating. The rules, the assumptions that now we are supposed to choose of how you get your work seen and what you do then are breaking down. The gatekeepers are leaving their gates. You can be as creative as you need to be to get your work seen YouTube and the web, and whatever comes out of YouTube and the web can give you more people watching than television ever did. Nobody knows what the new rules are, so make up your own rules. Someone asked me recently how to do something she thought was going to be difficult, in this case recording an audiobook, and I suggested she pretend that she was someone who could do it. Not pretend to do it, but pretend she was someone who could. She put up a notice to this effect on the studio wall, and she said it helped. So be wise, because the world needs more wisdom, and if you cannot be wise, pretend to be someone who is wise, and then just behave like they would. And I'll go and make interesting mistakes, make amazing mistakes, make glorious and fantastic mistakes, break rules, leave the world more interesting. For your being here, make good art. Wow. Wow. We are intellectually stimulated. Learning to learn. Make your bed. Achieving your childhood dream. I wish you bad luck. Failures of kindness. Creative thinking. A journey on the information highway. Evan Williams. Well, I don't think it means that convenience is bad. I love Uber, I love Google, I love Amazon. I love that all these things do free me up to do other things, and I don't have to worry about lots of stuff. Those things are possible, but the convenience is only bad if you miss the point. If you miss that, it's about nourishment and freeing people up and doing better and better things. And if we only focus on the clicks and the connections and the retweets and the likes for the sake of more and more connections, and I think that's easy to do if you come from a time when it seemed like anything that would be successful on the internet would be a good thing, because the internet seemed like it had a bias toward good. Think about it now, it's just as there is still a great artisanal, healthy, amazing food choices despite the industrialization of agriculture. There is the potential and reality of amazing, positive, good things coming from the internet, even though its driving force is convenience. They have amazing desires. They have desires to make art and music and funny card games, and they have desire to help people and do science. Internet makes all these things more possible too. And you look at Kickstarter and Change.org and Etsy, and all these things are even using the power of internet to make it possible for people and individuals to compete against the conveniences that have been offered by mass manufacturing capitalism. So if we don't lose the point, that's a very good thing. And the internet is still awesome. And after 20 years in cyberspace today, I think it is mundane because it's ubiquitous, but it's also powerful and real, unlike it was back then, because it's ubiquitous. So let's go make it worthwhile. Don't complain, just work harder. There's a picture of Jackie Robinson. It was in his contract not to complain, even when the fans spit on him. Be good at something, it makes you valuable. Work hard. I got tenure a year early, as Chief mentioned. Junior faculty members used to say to me, "Wow, you got tenure early, what's your secret?" I said, "It's pretty simple. Call me any Friday night in my office at 10 o'clock and I'll tell you." Find the best in everybody. One of the things that John Snoddy, as I said, told me is that you might have to wait a long time, sometimes years, but people will show you their good side. Just keep waiting, no matter how long it takes. No one is all evil. Everybody has a good side. Just keep waiting. It will come out. Be prepared. Luck is truly where preparation meets opportunity. It's about my childhood dreams enabling the dreams of others and some lessons learned. But did you figure out the head fake? It's not about how to achieve your dreams, it's about how to lead your life. If you lead your life the right way, the karma will take care of itself. The dreams will come to you. Have you figured out the second head fake? The talk's not for you, it's for my kids. Thank you all. Good night. It's a reason to come to the reception. Remember, brick walls let us show our dedication. They are there to separate us from the people who don't really want to achieve their childhood dreams. Don't bail. The best of the gold is at the bottom of barrels of crap. Intelli was the big sabbatical at EA. I had been there for 48 hours and they loved the ETC. We were the best, we were the favorites, and then somebody else pulled me aside and said, oh, by the way, we are about to give $8 million to USC to build a program just like yours. We're hoping you can help them get it off the ground. They said, what? Oh God. To quote a famous man, I'll fix this. And he said, incredible partner, and we have a great relationship, personal and professional, and he has certainly been point man on getting a gaming asset to help reach millions of kids. And that's just incredible. But certainly would have been reasonable for me to leave 48 hours into that sabbatical, but it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. And when you do the right thing, good stuff has a way of happening. Give me this dorky spreadsheet thing I did, or it can just be one great man who tells you what you need to hear. The hard part is the listening to it. Anybody can get chewed out. It's a rare person who says, oh my God, you're right. No, wait, the real reason is you've all heard that. When people give you feedback, cherish it and use it. Show gratitude. When I got tenure, I took all my research team down to Disney World for a week. How can you do that? These people just busted their ass and got me the best job in the world. For life. How could I not do that? You can't get there alone. People have to help you. And I have to believe in karma. I believe in paybacks. You get people to help you by telling the truth, being earnest. I'll take an earnest person over a hip person every day, because hip is short term, earnest is long term. When you screw up and focus on other people, not on yourself, I thought, how do I possibly make a concrete example of that? Do we have a concrete example of focusing on somebody else over there? Could we bring it out? Go to graduate school, you're going to Carnegie Mellon. All my good students go to Carnegie Mellon. What he had kind of forgotten was that the difficulty of getting into the top PhD program in the country had really gone up, and he also didn't know I was going to take my GREs because he believed in me, which, based on my board scores, was a really stupid idea. I didn't get into Carnegie Mellon. No one knows this till today. I'm telling the story. I was declined admission to Carnegie Mellon. I was a bit of an obnoxious little kid. Okay, there's more stories.